Welcome everybody. I'll just remind you, when you speak, pull the microphone forward, click on and then click it off. Just remind you about phones. I can see councillors look a bit down at mouth because it's not as exciting as last night's meeting, but we'll see what we can do. What a night. Right, membership of the committee. Everything looks as though as printed. Yep. Right, item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Can we pass them as a true record? Thank you. Item 3, declarations and the interest in lobbying. Start off with Councillor Greaves. None. Councillor Pinnett.
None, Chair.
Councillor Bellamy.
None, Chair.
Councillor Thompson.
Through you, Chair, declaration of interest. The site at East Bailey, which is in my ward, also I've worked in favour of this scheme for about the last 3 years on and off. Thank you, Chair.
Carol.
Item 15, the Rise Hall Community School application. I'm a member of Kirklees School Services, so I think it's non-pecuniary.
Councillor Sokol.
None, Chair.
And myself, none, for a change. Item 4, we are webcast and we are on YouTube. Item 5, public questions.
No questions, Chair.
Item 6, we undertook a site visit this morning out to East Bailey. Item 7, deputations, petitions.
No deputations or petitions.
Right, planning applications, 8. Now then, we've had a request for one to be deferred, so with your permission, it's the one up at Bristol Retail. As it's been, officers are putting it down for deferral, it's being asked to be deferred. I'd be willing to bring it to the front, let the officer speak to it, take a vote on it, and then hopefully that's one out of way and we can carry on, if that's all right with you. Okay. Okay.
Chair, I'll keep it brief. This is the application at Bristol Retail Park. We received an objection on behalf of Tesco stores on Monday, which we've summarised in the update before you today. In essence, the rejection raises matters relating principally to the retail assessments being undertaken, as well as the availability for the Council's review of the retail assessment. In light of these comments, officers feel it would be appropriate to defer the application to allow the matters raised by Tesco stores to be properly considered in full before bringing the item back for determination. So we've put forward an amended recommendation to defer the application to enable officers to undertake further assessment of the retail impacts of the proposed development. Thank you, Chair.
Members, are you okay with deferring this? Has anybody got any comments on anything? Andrew?
I'd like to move the proposal that we defer it, because it just seems unreasonable to me when you've got a representation like that, which raises all those sorts of issues. We cannot be seen to just go straight through it and make a decision. So I'd like to move deferral.
Yeah, Councillor Greaves. Thanks. Milan?
Yeah, Chair, can I ask that why as a representation come from Tesco now? They are asking actually, and I've read in the report here, but why they did not represent themselves before?
Chair, I don't think it's anything sinister. They were actually waiting for the Council's assessment of the retail assessment to go online, which unfortunately didn't go online until very late on. So they didn't have time to put their representation in before that time, which is why we only received it on Monday.
Councillor Pinnett says, I think we need to defer this and do it by the book. So, members in favour of deferring, please show. Unanimous, thank you. Next item, and this is one that you've all seen before. So we're going off to New North Road, Huddersfield. David.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I'm David Wordsworth, the case officer for this application and team leader for Major and Minerals section of the Kirklees Council Planning Department. Agenda item 9 is the hybrid planning application for a mixed-use development of retail, office and residential accommodation. It incorporates 229 apartments and the erection of a food retail store. The development involves the conversion and alteration to a Grade 2 star listed building and demolition of curtilage listed buildings within the conservation area, as well as creating new vehicular accesses and surface parking areas. As the committee is familiar with the site, I will briefly summarise the site and development before addressing the issues for the committee to consider. The application site is the former Kirklees College site, New North Road, Huddersfield, and extends to 2.44 hectares. Huddersfield train station is located to the east and Huddersfield bus station to the south. The site is allocated for mixed use within the Kirklees local plan under reference MXS4 for housing, employment and retail. The site is classed as brownfield site within the Huddersfield town centre boundary of the local plan. Next slide, please. How does it work? Here are a few photographs of the site. The front elevation of the Grade 2 star listed former infirmary building. Block G of the former hospital. And this is a view from Portland Street facing the rear wing of the listed infirmary. This is to be retained. Clearly, vandalism and degradation has affected the visual amenity of the site. In terms of heritage constraints and heritage assets on or close to the site, the building central, you can see the Grade 2 star listed infirmary building. There's a Grade 2 statue, King Edward VII. There are 3 conservation areas close or crossing the site. The northern half of the site is within the Greenhead Park, New North Road conservation area. Huddersfield Town Centre conservation area is opposite side Castlegate to the east, and Springwood conservation area is located to the south. Listed buildings and 2 listed walls are at close proximity to the site, all are Grade 2. The hybrid application consists of an outline application on the northern element of the site and includes access and scale. If granted, reserved matters of appearance, layout and landscaping will be required to be submitted. On the remainder of the site, the application is full planning application, for which all the details are sought. The scheme proposes to demolish all the existing buildings on the site other than the former infirmary buildings and its wings. Listed building consent is sought for the alterations of the Grade 2 star listed building and the demolition of the other curtilage buildings within the conservation area, and does not require committee authorisation. In line with the hybrid plan, outline planning permission is sought for residential development on the southern part of the site. Northern part of the site. The new residential blocks totaling a total of 197 apartments. Full planning permission is sought for the retail food store on the southern part of the site and the conversion of the principal listed buildings and its wings in the central historical core. Office accommodation would be provided and the wings would be converted to create 32 residential apartments. Now, in terms of key planning matters, the committee members will recall that this application was presented to the Strategic Committee on the 24th of February earlier this year, and the committee resolved to agree to officers' recommendation to approve planning permission subject to the signing of a Section 106 agreement that firstly secured a phasing plan for the development, secondly required the arrangements for the future maintenance of drainage on the site, and thirdly secured an overage clause in relation to the costs of the conversion of the listed buildings. And the committee also required all the elevations of the food store to be faced in natural stone and a design review of the building to enhance its appearance. Of these matters, the drainage matter has since fallen away and maintenance would not be required in the Section 106. The applicants did revise the design of the Lidl food store and agree to all elevations in natural stone. The design is now considered acceptable of the food store, and I'll just show you a slide. That was what was previously proposed, and that is now the store that was agreed by officers to be acceptable. The application before members remains the same as was reported to Strategic Committee in February in terms of its quantum and uses and also its viability. However, a Section 106 agreement has not been signed between the applicants and the Council. The applicants will not agree to the conversion and restoration of the heritage buildings to an advanced stage being included within the phasing plan. The level of harm caused by the proposal has been assessed by Heritage England as less than substantial harm. This is primarily due to the extent of demolition of Kirklees listed buildings. Paragraphs 202 of the MPPS states that where a development proposal would lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including, where appropriate, securing its optimum viable use. This is also reflected within Local Plan Policy LP 35 of the Local Plan. Therefore, the key matter for committee to consider is whether the extent of the demolition of heritage assets is justified by the public benefits of the development that will not now include the restoration and conversion of the heritage buildings. The public benefits associated with the development are set out in paragraph 10.79 to 10.85 and are identified by officers as programme of urgent works to heritage assets, the enhancement and setting of the primary listed building and its wings through extensive demolition, the partial regeneration of a brownfield, highly prominent derelict site, significant level of investment and employment opportunities, the creation of 229 dwellings in a sustainable location within the town centre that will support vitality and viability of retail units and the local economy. The applicants have also submitted their view of what the public benefits are, and they are both within the agenda and also within the update. There are three matters for the committee to be mindful of in considering the very detailed report in the main agenda and the update. Firstly, the viability of the scheme is unchanged since Strategic Committee on the 24th of February. The viability assessment has not been reappraised, and the viability section and conclusion within the main agenda has not been amended. Viability is not seen as being central to the key consideration. Officers do accept that there are significant issues with viability that resulted in the previous officer recommendation to remove all Section 106 contributions towards affordable housing, education, open space and improvements to the pedestrian underpass beneath the ring road. Secondly, phasing of the development has been the key matter in negotiations between the applicants and officers since the item came to Planning Committee. The applicant scheme would secure a programme of urgent works for the heritage buildings but these are very similar to the urgent works that could be secured by issuing the landowner an urgent works notice under the Planning and Listed Building and Conservation Areas Act. The main difference being that under the applicant's programme of urgent works, the repairs to the roof would not have to be completed until 18 months following the grant of planning permission. If an urgent works notice was served, as is recommended, it would be as and when officers considered it expedient to do so and the heritage officer is present to advise of the current condition of these heritage assets. Thirdly, the local planning authority and the committee have a statutory duty under the Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act to have special regard to the desirability of preserving listed buildings and their setting and preserving or enhancing the character or appearance of conservation areas, and this is advised by Historic England. Therefore, Chair, the committee is in two parts. Firstly, to refuse planning permission in the absence of a completed Section 106 agreement. The development fails to secure the conversion of the listed buildings and therefore provides insufficient public benefits to outweigh the less than substantial harm caused by the scheme. Secondly, to confirm that officers will issue an urgent works notice as and when required to preserve unoccupied listed buildings under Section 54 of the Planning and Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act, to require works listed in A to E in paragraph 10.34 of the report to be completed and issued on the landowner. Thank you, Chair.
We've got two speakers. First one is Richard Irving.
Chair, members of the committee, to say this is one of the saddest days in my 30-year career is not an understatement. I appreciate I only have 3 minutes and I will try and convey my views as best I can in the time afforded. At the outset, I am extremely disappointed at the recent press release in the Huddersfield Examiner, which makes out the landowner has backtracked since this application was approved last February. Having spent in the region of £600,000 pursuing planning consent, they are categorically not backtracking. Chair, I can unconditionally state that as a development team, we made it clear from October last year that from a viability perspective, there is simply not enough residual value from this scheme to develop out in full the principal listed building and 2 wings as part of a phased development. This was verified through an independent assessment of the applicant's viability report, and following the February committee, we sought to agree heads of terms based on ensuring any contributions afforded to the scheme will be spent making the buildings watertight, such that there was no further deterioration of the properties. Having what we believe to be agreed heads of terms in terms of the phasing of development, your officers appointed solicitors to draft the Section 106 agreement, which we received at the end of April this year. It was only in August we received the news, like a bolt from the blue, that there was now an expectation the listed buildings needed to be developed out in full prior to the completion of the residential part of the development in the northern part of the site. This is simply not what was previously agreed and is a volte-face. Chair, when this was last presented in February, members' principal areas of concern were around the design of the Lidl and the potential size of the residential scheme in the northern half of the site. We made several changes to the Lidl in consultation with your officers, but members accepted the size of the residential building was critical in order to maintain a viable proposal. It seems now the officers are requesting you make an assessment of the public benefits of this scheme set against the extent of demolition and the fact the buildings will be made watertight and not built out as part of the first 2 phases unless a developer steps in to acquire this part of the site and fully develop it out in the short to medium term. Unlike the newspaper report, there is no expectation that the council foot the bill for the works. The developer has made a full commitment to fund £400,000 of urgent repair works. Chair, Historic England has been consistent in its consultation response in that they are happy for Kirklees Council to determine the applications. They highlight that the preservation of the principal listed buildings is key and that regard must be had to public benefits. The public benefits set out in Appendix 1 of the officer's report are as relevant now as they were in February. This development secures investment, jobs and much needed housing whilst preserving the listed building through what will be an agreed timetable of enabling works to make them watertight. Far from walking away, the landowner will continue to work with the council on an open book policy to look for partners to work with to develop out the listed buildings as quickly as possible. However, it simply does not have the requisite finances to do this in the first 2 phases, and Paul Fox will explain the financial situation in as much detail as 3 minutes as feasibly possible. Chair, without your council support, we will have worked with your officers in excess of 4 years, and we will lose all of the economic, social and environmental benefits of preserving the principal listed buildings in the best possible state, such that we can move forward with the wider important investment in the town. And Chair, more than happy to answer any questions that councillors may have. Thank you.
Chair, thank you for letting me speak today in addition to Richard. My name is Paul Fox, I'm a chartered surveyor and I'm speaking in my capacity as development manager for the landowners, having had over 4 years involvement with this site. The complete U-turn we experienced in August from the officers is based entirely on heritage and harm issues, and while I am in no way seeking to downplay their relevance, the issues simply cannot be divorced from viability in today's world, which is frankly what the officers' report is seeking to do. I felt compelled to speak today as I'm genuinely worried that there has been a miscommunication of the facts as to what is being proposed, and I want to provide clarity. We are seeking balance, and as such I want to talk to you openly about viability and use some real numbers. At today's date, the landowner has invested £3.25 million securing and holding the site whilst pursuing planning. If we were to secure a consent today, that would trigger an immediate further investment of £1.65 million commencing January 22. I would stress, based on the officer's comments, that would include the items stressed at points A to E in clause 10.34. That's a 6-month enabling works contract which would deliver a secured site, an end to the antisocial behaviour, full asbestos removal, demolition of the eyesore college buildings and protection of the listed buildings, as well as making it look like an important and committed gateway regeneration site. This also triggers a legal commitment via Section 106 to a further £300,000 of spend on urgent works to stem the further deterioration of the core of the listed buildings. That's a further £2 million of committed investment into the site to get the scheme moving forward. The Council's own commissioned viability study confirmed that the scheme wasn't viable with the £400,000 of Section 106 monies, but our proposal to fund this goes beyond independent viability advice and shows our flexibility to achieve balance and do the urgent repair works. If we can't make it work, no one can. We've tried every which way for 4 years. And to give you some numerical context, officers are seeking for us to use a potential land receipt of £2 million from the sale of the Phase 2 land to fully restore the listed buildings at a cost in excess of £10 million. I'm no maths expert, but it's pretty clear that doesn't work, and it frankly never has. Had the officer's position been made clear in February, I'm sure we wouldn't be sat here today. But again, for context, the requirement to spend that money would necessitate the sale of the 47 flats in the listed building at £248,000 per unit just to recover cost. The numbers, I'm afraid, simply don't lie, nor do the Council's own consultants' numbers. So, Chair, we are looking for a planning and viability balance, but it really comes down to what you, the members, want. We are proposing to make an immediate start. We're proposing to make an immediate start by investing a further £2 million demolishing the eyesore that exists and preparing the site as a regeneration scheme to attract new inward investment. The alternative is that you end up stuck with what you've got for years to come. The final important point is it's
Your microphone's not on. Right, members, so over to you, Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Having heard all of that and what Mr. Wordsworth has said, it puts the thing into stark detail. And it is suggested somewhere that if there is still an impasse between what the developers and what the officers are saying, then that they are suggesting that it perhaps could be deferred, so that these things can be thrashed out. I mean, I don't know how difficult the relationship is, but it does seem to me that this is such an important site that we should, I won't say take any offer that's going, but clearly an offer has been made which listening to what's been said, I think is a way forward if it can be agreed with with our officers, and that's a fairly important thing. I accept that it is probably impossible to put the restoration of the listed building higher up the agenda than is suggested. I can appreciate that will actually be quite difficult and time consuming. But I'm assuming that what is being proposed will include making the building watertight, so that full restoration can take place later. I suppose I was a little bit worried about curtilage buildings of the listed building, but it does seem to me that as with all sites that involve restoring a listed building that has got into a bad way, you have to make compromises. I've dealt with this in other places as well, and to some extent, if there is a loss of curtilage buildings, then I think that just has to be taken as, well, you might describe it as collateral damage, but that's probably a rather blunt way of putting it. But I don't quite know where we stand in terms of how far apart the two parties are. I would like to propose approval of this, but if that's not possible, then I would also like to propose deferring it so that fairly urgently we can try and sort out the differences that will enable us to have a development that will enhance the approach to Huddersfield Town Centre rather than what we've got at the moment. And I'm not one of those people who say just because the site is in a bad way we must do something about it and therefore do anything. It's got to be done. It's got to be done right. So I'm sorry if I'm not more specific, but I've got two possible proposals there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. It is a key site for Huddersfield, without a doubt. I don't think it would be right to approve it without being clear as to what's going to happen with the infirmary site. At the same time, I'm reluctant to refuse permission, whilst there's a chance maybe of coming to some understanding. So, to me, I'd like to have the developer and planning to continue talking about how this scheme can be progressed. I think there's an opportunity that it could be. I think for speaking personally, I'd want to have a bit more clarity around the future of that infirmary building, what the longer term plan is. But I'd like to see something go ahead on this site within a reasonable amount of time, and I think it's worth carrying on talking and negotiating, and I'm happy to move deferral on that basis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My first concern is with the listed building. I have to be honest, when I came to this country many years ago, my first appointment was in this and purpose is this listed building. I can't see to deteriorate this building further down to the road. It's already, we have seen the pictures going, how they're going. So, with regard to some members are proposing to defer this plan application for further discussion between the developer and the officer. We can't simply defer this application without any undertaking or any condition Otherwise, it will carry on. Officer might come back. The developer do not agree with that. So we need to consider. We need to, if we want to defer this application, we need to put some condition and time limit on that. We can't carry on another 4 years. Yeah. This building is a very prominent building right on the edge of the town, so we need to work out, I think, best way is up to the developer and us, an officer, to find out some solution. Thank you, Chair.
Was that me? Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I am feeling that I know it's been 4 years, and it's been a long 4 years. I felt it actually feels longer than that. But when you look at 4 years and you think planning to agree 106 agreement within 3 months. I mean, it actually feels on this particular site that even 3 months is is very hard to achieve. I do feel that there has to be some more room for negotiation, and that from what we're hearing from the developers is possible. Certainly, I don't want to see anything, just anything on there. I wouldn't like them to walk away from here today thinking, oh, that's all right. We'll just do amend or whatever. But we still want that gateway development at the edge of town. We also want it within a speedy timescale, because there's so much else happening in the town. It will really detract from the town if we don't manage to bring this corner into all the rest of the upgrading to the town. It will be a crying shame. And if we were to go back to square one, I think that's where we would be. So yeah, I mean, I agree with Mo, and there has to be some. If we are to defer it, then obviously there has to be some conditions on it. I'm not quite sure what those are in terms of timescale or whatever, but I would be happy to defer with conditions.
Deborah.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to suggest that this is an appropriate forum for members to give officers some kind of steer on what this further negotiation for the phasing might be, because that seems to have been the stumbling point in reaching some kind of an agreement in the Section 106, some clarity about timescales for delivery, which can be achieved within a Section 106, and that's what's held matters up now, because there seems to be no clear offer of a timetable to ensure delivery, which is what members want to see. The negotiation comes within that the timescale, but some kind of idea from members what the long stop is, so to speak, and some kind of idea from members of when the restoration works to the principal building will commence. Is that immediately or within 18 months? I think members should perhaps express some kind of opinion now when the developers are here to talk it through, to give officers a steer, so a kind of a beginning and an end almost, some parameters for officers to work within.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to throw that back to officers, to be perfectly honest. I think that officers should have come prepared with giving us some options as far as timeframes and the development of this site, and some clarity on maybe what the stumbling blocks were. I don't think, as far as members are concerned, that we are in a professional position to be able to make assumptions on it where the officers are. I mean, that's my honest feeling, that we should be steered by officers to make conclusions rather than the other way around. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Well, I agree with that to some extent, but certainly those who have spoken so far otherwise have suggested the importance of this site, and that in itself is a clue, which I'm sure officers have already got from day one in this application. I do think that yes, the professional expertise of the officers should be employed here. That goes without saying, but the committee is here to give a steer where appropriate. But I would sort of add to that we need to be advised where, in a certain sense, where we can steer it. There are probably some things which all of us would like to do, but maybe it's not steerable. For instance, the restoration of the Grade 2 star listed building, the developers have quite clearly said that the full redevelopment, full restoration of it cannot be done at an early stage, simply because the financial resources are not there. Now, I recognise what officers are saying on that score, for instance, but I would like to explore whether the mere making the building watertight would be enough to satisfy the officer position, bearing in mind that the building can be dealt with at a later stage when finance is available. I think we need to be realistic about these things, and it's no good, in my opinion, putting down conditions that we know perfectly well can't be fulfilled, at least in a short time scale. I just think that's being unrealistic. But what I want to know, really, from officers, in a sense, is will the mere making of this building watertight be enough? Bearing in mind what's being said. I mean, does the urgent works notice require full restoration to take place, or can it mean, as I hope it does, that the urgent works will deal with the current problems of water ingress and other things happening to the building? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'll address some of those comments, members, and then I think it would be useful to hear from our heritage officer in terms of the comments there about the urgent works notice. So, in terms of site delivery, it is a very detailed proposal that has come before you in terms of the report. Now, officers haven't suggested that the conversion of the listed buildings should be done in the first phase. That isn't what was proposed within the phasing agreement. The conversion of the listed building would have to be completed before the northern part of the site was fully occupied, and those parameters were set out. Yes, we appreciate that there is significant viability issues, but under the applicant's scheme, which is what we've brought today, because we need clarity from the committee about what they are willing to consider. Under the applicant's scheme, there would be no certainty how the listed buildings and when they would be converted. The listed buildings would be boarded up and effectively mothballed, and restoration would be left to a later date. Now, what the applicants are proposing is that the Lidl would be, the food store would be erected and operational. The site, it would be cleared, but the restoration of the list of buildings would be not secured through the phasing agreement. So there is some hope value there that they may be restored at a further date. Now, officers are advising you that in terms of public benefits, there's significant public benefits from requiring the conversion of the list of buildings to be secured through the Section 106 agreement, but the applicants aren't proposing the conversion as part of the scheme. It's the mechanism to secure the conversion that the applicants won't sign up to the Section 106 agreement for. I hope that's clarified it, Chair, but I'll bring Nick Grimshaw in, please, about the urgent works.
Thanks, Chair. The scheme, when we were initially discussing, obviously the buildings at the moment are recorded in the applicant's submission from August 20 as being in a poor condition and with gaps in the roof and not being wind and weather tight. So we're now considerably further on, and if you go to the site now, you will be able to see very evident openings in the roof, and the buildings are not wind and weather tight. We advised in February that the simple urgent works needed to be implemented ASAP in order to simply arrest the evident deterioration. Those works have not been done, and the current proposal seems to suggest that those works would not be undertaken until, commencing in ideally with some works in January next year, but with works to secure the wind and weather tight state of the building not until the summer, and then the following summer being works to the temporary roof. Now, that may be not what's been suggested this morning, because I think the applicants have suggested this morning that the enabling works, as they describe them, would include works to make the building wind and weather tight, and obviously that is welcomed and makes sense. And if I've misunderstood that, then perhaps they could clarify. But it's quite evident that to simply allow a building to be open to the elements and to allow the current deterioration to continue will mean that in the period by which they're proposing to get round to the roof repairs, there's not going to be much of the building left, potentially, but certainly there would be considerably more repair works required. So I think it is evident that the scheme was originally presented as being a package of works to facilitate a major regeneration scheme, which included obviously the Lidl, clearance of the redundant college buildings, but also facilitated focusing on the Grade 2 style listed buildings, which were made available to be converted by allowing for a considerable residential development. Now, I think the concern really is twofold, in so much as that we've got no certainty as to when the Grade 2 style building would be restored, or even actually just maintained or in its deterioration arrested. And secondly, we have no certainty at all in terms of the scale and design of the residential development, which is supposed to facilitate that. Now, I mean, I accept that there's clearly a disagreement from the developers and the officers, but I think the facts as presented suggest that what we may end up with is basically a cleared site, hoarding around the Grade 2 style listed building. That deteriorating as the Lidl becomes developed.
In that case, I would like to since Councillor Greaves has already proposed deferring this, I would like to second that on the grounds that, and Councillor Sokol mentioned what conditions we need. There we have there's the steer that officers and developers sit down together and work out how they can come to a compromise with each other that ensures that the building is made wind and weather tight whilst the rest of the site is cleared. That is the important bit, that development of the other parts of the site needs to go ahead, because that will help, but presumably help fund the other bit. But the protection of the listed building is probably more important than that. You do that, make sure that the rain is not getting in and that it's not getting vandalised. So if that's the steer that we're giving, I will second the proposal of Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Pinnock. I think from what the officer was saying, though, do we not need some clarity on when the listed building upgrade is going to start and be concluded, as well as the enabling works, which is the weather and weatherproofing of it?
Yeah, Chair, I have listened to the officers. They clarified a lot of issues in this report, and I think they are right, their recommendation to refuse this application. But here, as we a member of the Strategic Planning Committee, I think we are all, most of them are in agreement to give some opportunity to the developer to sit down with the officer, work out some solution how to safeguard our listed building on there. If they agree, they come back to the committee again, or we give some delegation power if they agree. If they don't agree, if they fail to agree, they come back to the committee. Our recommendation to refuse stays. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, just to add, I think that there's two parts to this. There's obviously making the building watertight and waterproof and preparing it, and the second part is securing its conversion. So we can obviously defer the application and go back and talk again to the applicants, but what we have been unable to do is secure that conversion element within the Section 106 agreement. So we can go back and try again at your request. We can do that. And then we'll see where we get to, and we can bring it back to you once we've had further discussions with the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it's important when committee are taking a vote, Chair, to defer. From my understanding from Councillor Pinnock and Councillor Sokol, they would like the application to be deferred, but they want discussions with the applicant team to secure the watertight and weatherproof measures for the roof to be implemented early on in the scheme. You want the listed buildings protected, and you want some certainty about when the heritage buildings are going to be fully restored. That's my understanding from the comments. You want some clarity about when the restoration will happen. Now, we did discuss with the applicants, and this is the reason why it's been come back. And it's probably one to discuss at the next planning committee. But we did discuss with the applicants the mechanism for securing the restoration, and that's the hub of it. That's what we couldn't agree on. So with that, Chair, if you're going to take a vote, I think that's sensible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, however we look at this, something definitely needs doing with that site. I mean, it is an eyesore. For me, it is protection of those listed buildings, and when, you know, they do need that protection. So, you know, how long it takes to do the overall development. And I completely understand that obviously they're going to need funds to do that part of the development. If we do defer this, what I was going to say is, for those discussions to take place, can we put a time limit on how long that those discussions are going to be for? Because I don't want this, you know, we're already 4 years down the line. We don't want to be sat here in another 4 years discussing it. So we're going to say, can we, you know, either to the next meeting or the one after that at the very sort of latest? Can that be put on? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I'm only going to say what everybody else has said, really, but the demolition of the new college, or the college, the new buildings, has to be a high priority, as does the making the listed buildings watertight, etc., to the point where they cannot deteriorate any further. I mean, I think that's important. It's not just a bit of tarpaulin going over the top of them or anything like that. I mean, those are the two priorities as far as I'm concerned. And yes, it is a priority, or we would want to see some certainty on restoration, but that comes as a second priority, if that makes some sense. I would love to see that the new buildings demolished in January 22. That would be absolutely brilliant, just to see that happen. And I think it's so important in terms of the safety of the site, etc. Not the actual site itself, but people getting onto it, etc. Let alone the fact that it looks an eyesore. But there has to be. I do think there has to be some flexibility around that certainty on restoration, and that's where that is, as David's been saying, that is where the negotiation has to take place. So we're not, I don't think, going to back down, if I'm reading the meeting correctly, on that need for certainty on restoration. We will not accept, I think, the developers or the officers coming back in another 6 months' time saying, well, actually, we looked at this and no, we can't do it. The viability. Let's have a realistic assessment on when it will be viable to complete that restoration. And, I mean, dare I say, as far as I'm concerned, if that isn't before the new build takes place, then so be it, as long as there's absolutely no further deterioration to the listed buildings, and all plans for those are still fully in place.
Right, I'll bring Charles in, but then I will bring the agents in. Oh, Charles.
Thank you. I think Councillor Patterson sort of summed up the sentiment, but I just maybe just to add my own little steer to it. Whilst it'd be brilliant to have a detailed plan and timescales of when the full conversion would take place, as a minimum, we just need to be clear on what the long-term preservation of the building is going to be. We've got a meeting date scheduled on the 24th of March next year, and I think as an end date, if we could come out with something before then, fine. If not, 24th of March gives, if there's a chance to make an agreement, that gives a few months to do it. So if we want in, I think members have been clear in terms of what progress we'd like to see, and with the 24th of March as an end date, I think that's that would be fine for me, and I hope my colleagues would agree with that. Thank you.
Right. Urgent, have you got anything to add to it, or disagree with, or agree with, or...?
No, we've heard clearly what members have said. 3 minutes was not a long time to get across 4 years' worth of work, and I reiterate, there is no backtracking from this landowner developer. We want to work with the council. We'll continue to work with the council. 24th of March, fine. You know, we'll be on the phone to David tomorrow. You know, that's we want to work with the council, but we've been pleased to be able to set out the viability issues because they are so inherently important in this application, and I'm pleased that we've been able to put those figures to you. But we'll certainly speak to the officers very shortly.
Right. Is that, Deborah, is that okay? Oh, is it? Is that all right, what we've heard to defer? All clear? Yeah. Just saying.
Chair, I think we're clear that members prioritise making the building watertight, waterproof, preserving it for the future, and then we'll have a discussion about how we look forward to converting the building in the future, and that'll have to be a discussion between the parties.
Right. I'll just go backwards. It was actually moved for deferment by Councillor Pinnock originally, and then Charles seconded you. But anyway, that's where we are. So, we'll go to a vote for deferment.
Councillor Greaves?
For deferment.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Bellamy? For. Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Pattison?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Yeah. Right. Next, page 85. This is Lower Hopton, Murfield. Adam, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Adam Walker, Senior Planner for the Council. So, as members can see on this aerial photograph, the application, the application is for the demolition of an existing mill and the erection of 5 commercial units on a brownfield site in Murfield. There's an existing dilapidated mill in the southern part of the site that contains a small number of businesses, and the northern part of the site contained a small factory up until a few years ago. Immediately to the east of the site is the River Calder. To the west of the site is a residential care home with recent housing development lying beyond. Access to the site is from Chadwick Fold Lane with egress via Calder View. These roads split traffic where they pass below a railway bridge. Both roads are unadopted, although there is an application with the council for the adoption of the roads in connection with the new residential development to the northwest of the site. This slide shows the proposed layout plan. It's a row of 4 adjoining units in the eastern part of the site, along with a single detached unit sat perpendicular to that row. A total of 53 parking spaces are proposed, and a turning loading area will be provided in front of the units. A new point of access is proposed off Calder View, and this would form the sole point of access for the development. The layout includes the provision of a riverside path along the eastern boundary of the site, as well as areas of soft landscaping. The units will be for light industrial purposes, which includes the research and development of products or processes, or any industrial process which can be carried out in a residential area without causing detriment to amenity. This slide shows the proposed elevations of the units. The units will be 2 stories in height and faced in buff brick with profiled metal cladding above. The units would have a monopitch roof constructed of grey profiled metal sheeting. This view shows how the buildings would sit within the site. The detached unit is on the left and the southern end of the row of 4 units is on the right. The River Calder and proposed riverside path are on the right of the image, and there's water storage below each unit in the event of flooding, which is noted on the drawing. And this slide shows a 3D perspective of the units. The site has an established commercial use, and in this regard the principle of the proposed development is considered to be acceptable. The site is within a high flood risk area, being almost entirely in flood zone 3 on the Environment Agency's flood map. However, as set out in the report, development on the site can be considered to be acceptable in policy terms. This is because the development is for a use that is classed as less vulnerable in flood risk terms, and the proposal relates to an already developed site where the footprint of the new development would not exceed the existing footprint of buildings. Furthermore, suitable flood risk mitigation measures are proposed within the new units, including raised floor levels. Officers have accepted that there are no sequentially preferable sites for the development proposed, which is intended to provide new accommodation for some of the existing businesses within the mill. Officers have also accepted that the wider sustainability benefits of the development, in terms of providing new purpose-built employment floor space, which could support around 35 full-time jobs, outweighs the risk posed by flooding in this instance. Members will note from the update that plans have been submitted which now include a mezzanine floor within the units. This would allow safe refuge in the event of an extreme flood event. A condition is also recommended requiring details of a dry emergency egress for pedestrians, following recent comments received from the Environment Agency. Officers are aware that the vehicle access to the site is problematic because it is prone to flooding. Measures to mitigate this are being looked at as part of a road adoption agreement relating to the neighbouring residential development. It is not considered feasible for this development to provide any additional specific measures over and above those already being looked at. However, a contribution is sought towards a flood recovery scheme which would mitigate the effects of flooding through a commuted sum to help with the clean-up costs following a flood event. The development is considered acceptable in highway safety terms, and the Highways Officer is available to answer any questions on highway matters. The proposed use is compatible with the adjacent residential development, subject to conditions to control noise, lighting and hours of use. The proposal would secure land for the Murfield Promenade project and would deliver a biodiversity net gain of 10% through a combination of on-site measures and off-site contribution. In conclusion, officers consider that the application accords with local and national planning policy and guidance and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
One speaker, and it's Andrew Keeling.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Andy Keeling. I'm a planning consultant. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. Today is really a culmination of quite a long and lengthy process of negotiations with your officers. We've had pre-application discussions with officers and submitted a planning application. Now, I should say that those negotiations have always been positive. They've always been leading towards today. And that's because officers very early on accepted that the retention of this industrial site, this site that is in effect is at end of life for its buildings and needs redeveloping, accepted that as a principle was a good thing. It's been a really positive process because basically the existing industrial use will be retained. It will be made better with new industrial units. Jobs will be created and retained. And as part of the application process, we will secure the parts of the Riverside Walk which are adjacent to the site. There's been really a single technical issue that's held up the process, if you like, and it's a complicated one. It's been subject to several negotiations of modelling and detailed elements that I really wouldn't like to go into because I don't know too much about them, but they are quite significant in their sort of relevance to the application. So the experts have got together, if you like, and have dealt with that matter in some detail, and that's what's taken the time. That's what's taken the time. We're not complaining in any way about the time, we're just saying it's taken time to get to here. So we've worked with the EA and your and your drainage people, and EA now don't object to the application, which is why we're now here looking at a positive recommendation. So, Chair, just in conclusion, we've had a lengthy but very positive negotiation process with officers. There are many positives to the scheme. I've seen agents argue industrial sites should go for residential here. We're saying it shall be retained, and I've seen members agree to that, but with reluctance. And there was only one issue, a technical matter, flood risk. It was complicated, but we have dealt with it, and the professionals now agree that we can move to a positive recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm fully in support of this application. There is only one issue, to my mind, and that is the access. Now, for those who know the site, this is a road that goes under a railway bridge, and clearly you can't raise the level of the road because you can't raise the level of the railway line. And that road does get flooded on quite a few occasions. What I'd like reassurance about is, because it's not clear from the list of conditions, what exactly can be done on those occasions when that access is unusable. In other words, people can't get into the site, because that has happened sometimes as well. Now, admittedly, with some levels of water, you can drive through them, but after a certain point, it's just stupid. So clearly, there will be occasions when people can't get into the site, and then the effects of the flooding, in other words, mud and so on, needs to be cleaned off. I'd just like reassurance on how that's been dealt with in the conditions, because I would not like people in the future to start arguing about who's responsible for what when it comes to dealing with the aftermath of a flood on the access road. I'm not talking about the building, it's getting into the site. Thank you, Chair.
I think I know where you're coming from with that one, because I think we were on the same site visit when a car was floating about underneath that bridge. So, Adam, have you any idea what can or can't be done?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, those roads under the bridge, they're currently unadopted, but the council is currently in the process of a road adoption agreement, and that's in connection with the housing development further along, which is 99 houses being built out by Gleeson's. So those negotiations are well advanced. As part of that, there is due to be some works to a pipe under the bridge which connects to the river to put a non-return valve on, and that should help the situation. However, it won't eliminate flooding under that bridge. I think quite simply there isn't a way of preventing flooding under the bridge full stop, but there are things that are being looked at to mitigate it. One of the other things that would form part of the road adoption agreement is the introduction of signage. Now that would be telemetry signage, so electronic signage. When the water level reached a certain height, that would then flash a warning on the sign to alert drivers not to try and drive through the flood, and hopefully avoid situations where we get cars floating. And then in addition to that, there is through those archways you've got two roads, and then there's a pedestrian access, and then there's another access that connects through to the care home. So one of those roads would form part of the adoption agreement, so there would be in theory a safe dry vehicular access through the bridge, so emergency services, for example, could go to and from. But then in terms of this application, we don't feel there's anything that this scheme can reasonably deliver to mitigate flooding under the bridge. However, we have sought a contribution of 10,000 to help with the clean-up operation following a flood event, and that's essentially the best we can do, because the road adoption agreement is probably taking things as far as it physically can, given the constraints.
Thanks, Adam. Mohan?
Yeah, Chair, this is already industrial site, yeah, area. I'm sure during that time people might access to this industrial site somehow, even there's a flooding or whatever, yeah. But officers have explained there is another scheme, housing, 90 housing there, and this road is a flooding road, is an unadopted road. When it is adopted, there is a council best considered to do some measure. But I think even the Murphy Town Council have no comments. They might have agreed. Even most openly spoken councillor Martin Board, he more or less agree with this application. Yeah, even he mentioned about flooding, but it seemed to me he agreed first time to any application in Murfield area. It's a brownfield site here. I don't see any problem. Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to move this for officer recommendation.
Yeah, I would. I agree that this does seem to be a very positive development, and I am pleased to see it, and I will actually move it with the addition of the 2 extra conditions that are in the update. But just before, well, can I just clarify there what is meant by, or what is the emergency access and egress plan for pedestrians? I mean, is that the set going under the bridge, or is that? I'm not quite sure what's meant by that.
Through you, Chair, yeah, the form that will take needs to be determined through a design process, but essentially it needs to be some kind of raised feature that would allow workers, visitors to the units to get out of the site, which.
Well, with that, as I say, with that clarification, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Right. Yeah. It's Donna.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, as we've said, it is already industrial down there as well, so I don't really see any sort of major problems with this. I understand about under the bridge. Yeah, it's horrendous. It's usually floating. The only thing I will say is we might need a bigger boat.
Right, well, it has been moved first by Councillor Sokol, so I'll put you down to second it, Carol. If you're all right to go for a vote, we'll go for a vote.
Councillor Greaves?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Bellamy?
For.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Patterson?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
Unanimous, Chair.
Next, page 123. This is Unsworth Lane, East Bailey, which we went to have a look at this morning.
Chair, have you missed out the Dewsbury Market application?
And it's Adam.
Thank you, Chair. The The application is for a comprehensive development or redevelopment of Dewsbury Market. The first slide shows the existing market. It comprises of the market hall and semi-covered market in the southern part of the site. And these buildings aren't listed, but they do have some heritage value. There are the outdoor market stalls, a toilet block, 2-storey office and a terrace of 5 former fish units. Clothall Street runs through the middle of the site, and then there's a waste compound on the opposite side of Whitehall Way. Surrounding the site are a range of uses including a public house, public car park, commercial and residential development. The site is within the Dewsbury Town Centre Conservation Area, and it also falls within the Dewsbury Primary Shopping Area on the Kirklees Local Plan Proposals map. The market is also designated as a primary shopping frontage. The next slide shows the proposed layout. The proposals involve the retention of the market hall and semi-covered market, which will be stripped back to their original form and upgraded. Glazed curtain walling will be provided to much of the ground floor of the market buildings, which incorporates bifold doors. New stores will be provided within these buildings, plus a partial mezzanine floor within the market hall. The removal of the outdoor stalls and replacement with new stalls in pods of 4 or 6. There'd be the demolition of the toilet block, office building and fish units. A small cafe pavilion close to the entrance off Foundry Street. A pocket park to the northwest of the site. Landscape into Foundry Street and Whitehall Way. The retention of the existing decorative gates to each end of the market. And an enlarged waste compound which would extend into the neighbouring car park. This slide gives an impression of what the market buildings would look like in comparison to the existing, with existing images on top and a corresponding artist's impression below. The images on the left show the market hall with the new glazed facade at ground floor level. The upper floor will be restored. The new cafe pavilion is on the left. The images on the right show the semi-covered market and some of the open market stalls viewed from Whitehall Way. It is proposed to have a terracotta cladding to the back of the semi-covered market, which is shown in a blue colour here. This image, or the image on the left, shows a view from Clothall Street, looking towards the market buildings, and the image on the right shows the side of the cafe pavilion with the same terracotta cladding. Going into a bit more detail, the semi-covered market would include new stalls, which would predominantly comprise food and beverage stalls set around a flexible seating area. This flexible space is intended to act as an entertainment venue with loose furniture that would enable this space to be reconfigured to accommodate events. The design of the proposal allows for this area to spill out into the outdoor market if necessary, as can be seen on the images on the left. A standalone bar is proposed within the semi-covered market, along with new toilet facilities. The market hall would have new stalls which will be focused on food, such as meat, fish and baked goods. The market stalls will be able to open up to the street with glazed bifold doors. A mezzanine floor, which you can see on the far right image in green, would be provided, and this would deliver office space, a staff room, a meeting room and a CCTV room. The next slide shows the proposed pocket park on the left and the landscape into Foundry Street. Existing trees will be retained and new tree planting provided along with raised planters. The pocket park will provide seating and opportunities for informal play. Final layout details will need to be secured by condition. The image on the right shows the outdoor lockable stalls. These will be secured by shutters when not in use, with the canopy and fascias having a perforated design. And the final slide shows how the outdoor market will be secured. The outdoor stalls will be shuttered off in groups when not in use, with solid shutters to the stalls and open grille shutters in between. This is a significant improvement on the existing situation where the stalls are permanently open. To further secure the market site out of hours, the police have recommended that Clothall Street and the 2 linkages to Whitehall Way are closed off. A condition has been recommended to secure details of how the market site can be fully secured out of hours to prevent unauthorised access. There would also be an upgraded CCTV and lighting scheme. The market also employs a security presence out of hours, and the new mezzanine floor includes a CCTV control room. The report before members provides a detailed assessment, but in summary, the proposals would strengthen this key asset for the town and help to support the vitality of the wider town centre. The market offer would be enhanced and diversified, which would encourage footfall, link trips and dwell time within the centre, which would benefit the economy and vibrancy of Dewsbury. The physical changes to the market would create a more attractive and welcoming environment, and the proposal would also benefit the character of the conservation area by removing features that do not make a positive contribution and by restoring the historic buildings. The new tree planting and plant beds to the periphery of the market would improve the public realm, and the provision of a pocket park would introduce an appealing area of open space into the town centre. There are not considered to be any significant highway safety implications, and the development can be controlled so as to ensure that the amenity of nearby residential occupiers is not unduly prejudiced. The proposal would vastly improve the security of the market, which should help to address ongoing antisocial and criminal behaviour issues at the site. By way of a verbal update to the report, the Environment Agency has confirmed that they have no objection to the application, subject to a condition requiring the development be carried out in accordance with the submitted flood risk assessment and the mitigation measures it details. There are no objections from all other consultees. In conclusion, officers consider that the proposals accord with local and national planning policy, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Right, we've got 3 speakers. The first one is David Stanyland.
Good afternoon, my name is David Stanyland from BDP. I'm the planning agent for this planning application representing Kirklees Council. Full planning permission is sought for the redevelopment of Dewsbury Market. The existing stores and lock-up units forming the outdoor market are to be replaced with new stores, both lockable and for daily licences, a cafe pavilion and open space. The proposal retains the original structure of the existing markets hall and the semi-covered market, which are to be refurbished. The new stalls within the market hall are to be predominantly food retail. The new stalls in the semi-covered market are to be predominantly comprised of food and beverage stalls set around a flexible seating area. This is intended as an indoor entertainment venue. Standalone bar is proposed within the semi-covered market, along with new toilet facilities. A landscaped area is proposed to the north-western end of the site to provide a pocket park, which will include informal seating, some limited play space. Consultation responses have been received on highways, flood risk, conservation and design, environmental services and landscape, none of whom have raised any objections. Though initial concerns were raised regarding crime and security, my client and the design and out crime officer have agreed that these can be resolved via condition, and on that basis the officer is content. The market has seen a decrease in footfall and has experienced reduced stall occupancy in recent years. There are significant materials considerations to indicate that permission should be granted, including securing the longevity and future success of the market through the introduction of new uses, increasing the flexibility of the spaces and allowing for a diverse programme of events. The proposal will strengthen this key asset to the town and help to support the vitality of the wider town centre. The market offer will be enhanced and diversified, which will encourage footfall, link trips and dwell time within the centre, all of which will benefit the economy and vibrancy of Dewsbury. In conclusion, I respectfully request that members back your officer's recommendation and that planning permission be granted. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Next dial-in is Keith Ramsey.
Hello.
Hello, Keith, can you hear?
Hello, yes, hello.
Right, you've got 3 minutes starting from now.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much. So I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Keith Ramsey. I'm chair of the Dewsbury Town Deal Board, which I hope most councillors will know what it is all about. And I really want to support this application because of the transformative nature that this project will bring to Dewsbury, to the town centre, to its economy and its visitor experience. It very much aligns, I think, with the NPPF approach, as the Dewsbury market lies very much at the heart of the local community, and it's part of our Dewsbury blueprint. It supports the growth and regeneration of Dewsbury town centre and its economy. I mean, development in view of the board, will, in our view, enhance the market area, and it will ensure a real 21st century approach to the sustainability of Dewsbury market. I think the board also welcomes many of the environmental improvements proposed, and in particular the Pocket Park proposal at the northern end of the site, coupled with the landscaping scheme proposed to Fountain Street. And I think the other points I'd want to raise, if I can, in my few minutes left, is it will allow for the development of a proper nighttime economy, which is long overdue in Dewsbury. This is the real physical and centre, and I think it will bring some real vibrancy. So I would very much want to support this on behalf of Dewsbury Town Deal Board.
Simon Taylor. Can you hear us, Simon?
Yeah, can you hear me?
3 minutes, first time I've ever said that to you.
Thank you to you, Chair, for allowing me to speak and to address committee. I'm not going to dwell on the planning merits of this particular application. I think the case officer has set out very clearly a clear case for the recommendation. We're really pleased that he's put it forward for approval. The things I wanted to pick up was the significance of this application in the context of the Dewsbury Town deal. And you've just heard from Keith Ramsey, who's the chair of the board there. Dewsbury's going through a really transformative time, and underpinning that is the commitment shown through the town deal, which is an initiative that we are working in partnership with the board and with central government on, and has allowed us to access an enormous amount of additional funding that wouldn't normally be available to us. So Dewsbury is in a very important position at the moment in terms of regeneration. So I'm here today because I'm leading that program on behalf of the council and the board. I wanted to just sort of reiterate the fact that the Dewsbury Market project forms one of a number of key transformative projects within the town investment plan, which we've agreed now with central government, and that plan is essential to accessing the additional funding, which is up to 25 million from government, and the council is working very hard to add in another 35 million to that, so a 60 million pound package of works. This application marks one of the first steps towards delivering that vision for a better town. The other projects are equally as transformative. They include the arcade, some fibre connections, a skills programme, a cultural programme, all aimed at trying to change the face of not just the town centre, but the Dewsbury wider area and its communities. So today marks a sort of really important first step on that journey. The Market project is one of the largest projects in that suite, and it will help to cement the position of that town centre within the wider Dewsbury community and help lead the way forward on total regeneration of that area. So I'm very hopeful that you have a very constructive debate. The report is very positive and I'm really pleased about that. And I only can hope that the recommendation is supported. But it is a very important day for the Town Investment Plan, the Dewsbury Town Deal Board, and also the Dewsbury communities. So thank you very much for that, Chair.
Right, thank you, Simon. Just been pointed out to me, somebody's commented about I'm on my phone. I can assure you, I am not watching football, I'm not watching the news, I'm not watching Homes Under the Hammer, I'm using a stopwatch because I'm having a bit of trouble with this time, so covering myself, and Sheila's also doing the same thing. Right, first speaker is Moam.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the new Dewsbury market, it will be a great news for the people of Dewsbury. Not only Dewsbury people surrounding area, Bartley, Heckman Bike and other Murfield, yeah? It certainly will regenerate the Dewsbury town centre, which at the moment you go around, you look around, most of the shops are closed. New Dewsbury market will attract shoppers far away from the other towns. So I fully support this application. But Chair, I want to ask officers just a couple of things, minor things. Yeah. One is there any car parking facility around the Dewsbury market? Second is, I would like to know the time scale, when is going to be demolished part of those, and when will be completed this one? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, there's no specific parking being provided as part of the application, but it is obviously within the town centre. It's a sustainable location. You've got an existing car park nearby. There are a few disabled parking bays and a taxi rank that would be affected by the proposals, but they're due to be relocated nearby, just to the other side of the market and into the existing car park. In terms of timescales, I couldn't comment on that. The agent may have more information on that issue.
We'd be looking to progress subject to the outcome of today and then discharging pre-commencement conditions straight away, pretty much.
Yeah, before I move approval, I'd just like to check one thing. Page 107, 8.1. So it's the comments from Kirklees Highways. So the issues regarding loss of parking spaces, taxi bay and disabled parking spaces has been addressed. But I'd just like to get some clarity on the loading bay. Obviously that deliveries to the market are going to be quite key. So could we just have some comfort around what arrangements have been made if the existing loading bay facilities have been lost? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. I mean, the loading bays have been repositioned to align with the new access points on Whitehall Way, but they are similar arrangements to what we have now. You will be unloading your vehicles off of the larger vehicles off of Whitehall Way. The smaller vans, I understand, can actually go through Clothall Street into the market itself.
Thank you, Chair. I will gladly second that, because it seems to me that over the last year or so, Dewsbury Market's been looking a bit tired, you know, notwithstanding the new gates that were put up a few years ago, and this comprehensive redevelopment will actually enhance the offer and put Dewsbury Market in a place where it's sort of leading the town centre. I don't know whether this is part of the application, but of course the market isn't open every day at the moment. I wonder whether there are any changes proposed to the opening hours of the market, so that it may help in some ways to encourage people into the town on days other than Wednesdays, which is the main market day. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair. The proposed hours for the market use is 6 in the morning till 11 at night, 7 days a week, and part of that is to give full flexibility for the market to open in the morning and then for events to be taking place later into the evening. I'll just add that there's sort of a bar within the semi-covered market, so it's a diversified and expanded offer.
Right, it has been moved and it has been seconded. So we'll go to a vote, Sheila.
Councillor Greaves.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Socko.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Unanimous, Chair. Carried.
Next item 13, page 123, and this is Unsworth Lane at East Bailey, which, if you remember, we went to this morning. It's Victor.
Thank you, Chair. Victor Grayson, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. This is an application for full planning permission for works to expand and enhance the existing outdoor sports facilities at East Bailey playing fields. The application relates to a 3.3 hectare site located to the south of the village of East Bailey. The site currently accommodates 2 grass pitches which are overplayed, are not flat and are prone to waterlogging, as well as a single-storey changing room building surrounded by paladin fencing. This aerial view illustrates the site's relationship with the village to the north, residential properties to the west on Hunsworth Lane, and Birkenshaw to the east. The application site red line boundary includes the access track that runs between the playing fields and Hunsworth Lane. Almost all of the application site is within the green belt, shown here in hatched green, and members will note that the main part of the application site is surrounded on all sides by greenbelt land. To the north, shown here in orange, is allocated site HS89, where last year this committee resolved to grant planning permission for a residential development of 46 dwellings. The brighter green areas are parts of the borough's wildlife habitat network, and the site generally slopes downhill from north to south. This is the view that members saw today on the site visit, the view from the northwest corner of the main part of the application site. Here we see the existing car park with its unsealed surface and lack of parking space markings. We also see the site's existing building, its enclosure and the goalposts and barriers that currently exist at the site. Beyond the pitches is a wooded area that forms part of the wildlife habitat network. This slide shows various views within the site, including of the site's existing building and of the existing access track, which members saw today is in a poor condition. The applicant proposes the replacement of the site's 2 pitches with a grass rugby pitch, a 3G synthetic pitch, a grass hybrid pitch and a multi-sport training area, so a net increase of 2 pitches is proposed. The applicant is also proposing a new clubhouse building and additional changing rooms, 2.4 metre high mesh fencing, 6 metre high fencing with 11 metre high catch nets at either end of the larger pitches, floodlighting mounted to 11 new columns, shown as red dots in the left-hand plan there, and 2 goal storage facilities. The car park would be moved and resurfaced with 113 parking spaces marked out, and a 30 metre long stretch of the access track would be upgraded. Some changes to levels are proposed in connection with the provision of the new pitches, as shown in these sections. Here we also see the proposed fencing and an example of the proposed floodlighting columns. In terms of assessment, it should be noted that MPPF and local plan policies strongly support the development and improvement of the borough's outdoor sports facilities, that various council strategies are similarly supportive, including the council's playing pitch strategy, which has identified a borough-wide shortage of 3G pitches and shortfalls in football provision, and that Sport England have not objected to the proposals. The main issue here is the site's location in the Greenbelt and the development's Greenbelt impact. Now, rather than go through each element of the proposed development, which members I had to do in the committee report, which is why it's so lengthy, apologies for that, I have summarised the situation in this slide. In short, some elements of the proposed development are not problematic in relation to the Greenbelt policies of the MPPF and the local plan. These are shown in green here. In the yellow and red eggs, if you call them that, are the elements which meet one or neither of the two main requirements of the relevant parts of the MPPF's Greenbelt policy, and because they don't meet both, they must be regarded as inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Members will be aware that inappropriate development in the Greenbelt requires very special circumstances for it to be approvable, and as set out in the committee report, it is considered that very special circumstances have indeed been demonstrated by the applicant in two respects. Firstly, the proposed development would greatly increase opportunities for physical activity. Paragraph 10.49 of the committee report sets out recently provided headline figures that help quantify this increase and which, frankly, speak volumes. Of particular note, taking into account the numbers and sizes of teams that currently play at the site, as well as away games, time lost to weather and pitch recovery, etc., just under 10,000 person hours of physical activity are currently undertaken at the application site per year. Members can explain in a bit more detail if need be as to how that's calculated. With the 4 pitches proposed, but without the proposed floodlighting, that figure would increase to just under 22,000 person hours per year. And then with the proposed floodlighting and the 792 hours of additional play it would enable per year, that headline figure would increase to just under 32,000 person hours per year based on member club usage alone. On top of that, there would be even more hours of physical activity associated with other users, although that amount would be dependent on take-up from additional private hire. So in summary, significant increases in physical activity would be enabled by this development. Secondly, the proposed development would enable continued and greater community use of the site's facilities, including greater provision for women and children. Of note, the applicant is a community organisation with charitable status dedicated to sports activity. In this respect, members, this applicant and this application differs to the Holmfirth High School scheme considered by this committee recently. A commitment to community use is enshrined in the applicant's charter, and the organisation has an appointed community liaison officer who works with the council and who is in contact with the East Byerley Primary School and other organisations regarding use of the site. The local team, East Byerley Village FC, already play at the application site. Under the current proposals, total lettable hours of the site's pitches would increase from the current 956 hours per year to 2,914 hours. These two matters attract significant positive weight and are considered to constitute very special circumstances that allow this inappropriate development in the Greenbelt to be approved. There are also public benefits of sufficient significance, it is recommended, to outweigh the landscape harm that the proposed buildings, fencing and floodlighting would cause. Turning now to highways issues, members will recall that as part of the residential scheme proposed to the north, most of the existing access track would be upgraded and a stretch would be adopted for use by those new residents and by visitors to the playing fields. A Grampian condition is recommended to ensure these necessary works are completed before the expanded sports facilities are brought into use. The remaining 30-metre stretch will be upgraded as part of the current application before members today. Adequate on-site parking is proposed for the expanded facilities, and conditions are recommended regarding travel planning, electric vehicle charging and cycle parking. Biodiversity concerns have been addressed through amendments made during the life of the application and through recommended conditions which would ensure a biodiversity net gain is achieved. An acceptable drainage scheme is proposed, including measures to ensure the pitches are better drained than the existing pitches are. In terms of neighbour amenity, the distances between the proposed pitches and existing and proposed neighbouring properties, and the intervening topography and trees would help limit impacts, as would the recommended conditions regarding hours of use, entertainment, noise from the clubhouse and control of the proposed floodlighting. 6 representations were received from members of the public, setting out a range of objections, queries and support for the proposals. In addition, the applicant submitted 3 letters of support from interested sports clubs. In conclusion, aspects of the proposed development outweigh its green belt and landscape harm, and other relevant planning issues have been adequately addressed, and in principle the improvement and enhancement and expansion of outdoor sports facility of the site is supported in principle. Approval of full planning permission is recommended subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Victor. We've got 4 speakers. First one is Councillor Smage on Teams, and you've got 5 minutes starting from now.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies for not being in the room today. I'm briefly speaking in support of this application. In order to support more youngsters into sport, the association wished to change the facilities as has been detailed in the application. Their plans to improve both pitches and facilities is needed for their ambitions to be a hub for the community, catering for people of all ages and sporting abilities. I welcome their wish to embrace disabled participants and increase opportunities for both girls and women. The community and sport benefits on the expanded facilities are really important for now and in the future. I do hope that the Planning Committee will support the association by approving the application, which is an essential next step for them to achieve their ambitions for sport. Thank you.
We've got Andrew Walker.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to committee members this morning for coming out to really put in context what our facility will provide for the community. I'm a volunteer director, as many are, on the board of East Barley Community Sports Association, and as part of the estate strategy, we've not just consulted with sports clubs. We're a community organisation, and we've sought support from East Barley Preservation Society, East Barley Junior and Infant School and various Kirklees outreach programmes that either use the site now or will do when it's completed. And it is really important to stress that the principal objectives of East Barley Community Sports Association when we took on the asset transfer from Kirklees, it was a joint objective. It was to improve the site. It was to accommodate growth of our teams. And in terms of funding, Kirklees could not invest nearly £5 million in the site, which will be needed to get it where it needs to be. As a community organisation, we can open up better funding and wider funding opportunities to achieve that, and we will. The key objectives that we consider our joint objectives with Kirklees is improving the playing pitch, resolving historic issues with the drainage system that we do lose probably 35% of our match play every year due to waterlogged pitches. We need to be inclusive, creating more inclusive buildings, particularly around women's sports, which has really developed this year in terms of rugby league. Sustainability. Ensuring the site was sustainable for future community clubs is important. Currently, we run at a loss. It costs us about £35,000 a year to maintain that facility. We get £25,000 in receipts. The gap funding is volunteering and volunteering events through the community that is always being achieved, and the community hub and clubhouse will go a long way to closing that gap for us. We've got to ensure that our obligations to the sport governing bodies are met, and post-match entertainment is vital on that. And also it will open up our site during the day to community groups. To date, we've invested nearly £800,000 in the site and changing out of 2 shipping containers to the facility you saw today. Then we've invested £450,000 in building that facility. In the past few years, we've invested £250,000 in planned preventative maintenance, and this planning process has cost nearly £50,000. Our efforts have been recognised by Kirklees GAP registration in having strong governance, leadership and measures in place to apply for funding. Without this future development, we would not be able to fulfil the joint objectives both Kirklees and East Barley made when we took on the asset transfer. Thank you.
Next is Simon Armitage.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the Strategic Committee. I'll be quite brief, actually, because Andrew and Victor have covered quite a lot of the detail in relation to what I was going to cover. My name's Simon Armitage. I'm just a mere former player and current volunteer trustee of the organisation that runs East Barley today, run by volunteers, 100% volunteers. So our entire board is made up of, there's no paid members of that board. You know, and I'm just an individual who's had his life enriched by being involved in grassroots sports, you know, whether it be from the relationships that I've met, that I've made, you know, the opportunities that have come my way as a result of those relationships over time, and you know, the proposals that are being made to you today enable us to expand those opportunities out to far more people than could ever have been imagined when certainly I was a kid growing up, and hopefully, you know, everybody on the committee will see what those proposals bring to the table and allow us to continue offering those opportunities and to make that organisation far more sustainable than what it is today. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members. My name is David Story. I'm a Chartered Town Planner speaking on behalf of the applicant. Before I start, can I just say that a bit of a trip down memory lane today. Like Councillor Sokol, I was a patient at the old Huddersfield infirmary that was put up on the site, although I was only a young child in the 60s at that time. We've been working on this project for some time now, and we went through the sort of pre-application process. And obviously through the application you'll see you've got a comprehensive report from your officers, some 39 pages long, which clearly sets out the issues, and the Greenbelt issues obviously are paramount. And we were fully conversant with that in taking this on and presenting the application. And we've taken lead from officers on this and made amendments to satisfy. And one of the challenges has been obviously the issue regarding the very special circumstance balance. And the evidence before you is quite compelling in terms of what we're seeking to achieve here. The improvements are significant in terms of increasing participation in sport and physical activity on the site. We're not talking about small increases, we're talking about significant increases, and that's bringing in, you know, boys and girls, adults, women and men as well. At the moment, the younger teams can't play on this site because of the constraints of the facilities. And that's a bit of a shame where you're a member of a club but you can't actually use those facilities. And I've been told by members of the club that you have situations where children have to train in a car park, and we're in 2021. This offers a real opportunity to improve these facilities, and as we sort of hopefully move out to a post-COVID era, I think everybody now fully understands the importance and benefits of participating in outdoor sport and physical activity outdoors. Associated with that, obviously, are the facilities for the clubhouse, which is seen as a core facility for teams participating. And it's good to see that Sport England support that element of the application. But in terms of the planning balance, your officers have made it quite clear that given the evidence before you, that there are very special circumstances to justify this development in the Greenbelt. We commend the recommendation to you and hope that you will support this application. Thank you, Chair.
To hospital on Moan's bus. He was driving, but and he hadn't changed a bit. Right, members, it's over to you. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, I'm happy to support this application, albeit that, you know, we do recognise the importance of the Greenbelt issue. I'm also actually pleased to hear that, because it was going to be one thing I was going to suggest, that East Barley Primary School have been they've been involved in discussions about use of the site, because I went out and had a site visit to the school on Sunday, so I went to this site on Sunday as well, and because I know the school has such little play area outside. It had to borrow some land from the common land around the school during COVID, and that sort of temporary nature of that play area is about to come to an end, I believe. But so it's good to hear that the primary school is involved in negotiating. They're not so far away, and they're sorely in need of that space to use as sports pitches, etc. So I am happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Like Carol, I fully support this application and I second that. And I'm really pleased the local sports association taking big step to improve this facility, which facility already there, to make some more easy for all age of people there, young and other one. So, and the building of the clubhouse, police sport, I think they need that there. But only thing I want to put there, and the access road, which a track road going to, is very bumpy and needs some upgrade that access. So thank you very much. I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're just going to say I fully support this application. You can see that they need a clubhouse. It might be greenbelt, but it doesn't have any impact on any houses. There's no close houses or anything, so floodlights aren't going to be an issue, not like they were on the other one. So yeah, completely happy to support.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to move this and then I was going to second it, so I missed an opportunity, but at least I feel that everybody else is supporting it, so everything else that I would say I've said to the guys that are responsible for this project. Don't feel as if I need to say anything else, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Like other members of the committee, I'm fully in support of this, and it is an absolutely brilliant application. Although it's not my ward, part of my ward's very close to this, and I'm sure people from there will make use of those facilities. There's just one nagging problem that I've got at the back of my mind, and if I can just draw members' attention to the point that was made about the making up of the access track, which is going to be done as part of the housing application on the nearly adjacent site. What happens if the club wants to do their development before that's happened? They're going to have a track, presumably a track that is still bumpy, but with the prospect that eventually it will be adopted and made up properly. But I don't suppose there are any other contingencies can be put into that. But that's just a slight problem in my mind, which I hope in some ways doesn't happen, but clearly it may need to. Otherwise, it's brilliant.
I was involved with this some years ago when I was on cabinet. I think it's a brilliant idea, and getting a proper clubhouse in is something that all sports clubs they do actually need. It's a great way of getting youngsters involved in mums and dads. So it's a brilliant idea. So it has been moved, it has been seconded. I've got it moved by Councillor Pattison, but there were nobody moved it until I think Mark did show an interest in seconding it. So I've got Mark down as seconding it. So we'll go to a vote.
Councillor Greaves?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Bellamy?
For.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Pattison?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous again. Right, next, page 163, and this is Cambridge Road at Huddersfield. Trouble House, I think it's pronounced.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Stuart Howden and I'm a planner. There we go. The application seeks planning permission for the formation of a 6-space car park at land adjacent to Travel House, 26 to 28 Cambridge Road, Huddersfield. And the application has been brought to committee because the proposal is departure from land to the west of Travel House Care Home. With the access in there, and then there's the rectangular piece of land with Travel House to the right of that rectangular piece. And Travel House itself is a care home for people with learning disabilities and associated challenging behaviours. The application site forms part of the approved larger Brambles primary school development, and section 4 of the committee report provides a little bit more detail on the planning history of the site. Prior to the development of the primary school, the site appeared to accommodate a number of trees, which doesn't show on there. It's on the right image. On the right image, you see the site being developed to make way for the primary school. And the site is accessed off Cambridge Road to the right, which is via an unadopted part of the highway. It is then accessed off a track which has been approved to serve the primary school development. So it's just a few photos of the site as is. Photo 1 on the top left displays the access to the site and the primary school development from Cambridge Road. And in the background, onto the right of the image, you can see the Travel House itself. On image 2, to the bottom left, you can see the boundary with Travel House, the boundaries to the right of the site, and that's the site itself in the image. And on image 3, that's the site again, and to the left is where the proposed access track would go to the Brambles Primary School. So this next image displays the layout of the proposed car park with 6 bays. This car park is proposed to serve the care home, which is labelled as number 28 on the right of the image. Access would be achieved via the access track that is to serve Brambles Primary School, and the parking area is proposed to be constructed from tarmac and would be slightly sunk into the ground, with the land being regraded to achieve this. So members have a full detailed report in front of them, but the site is designated as urban green space in the Kirklees local plan, and this designation is shown in the left image on the screen. So as a result, a key consideration with this application is whether the development is acceptable within urban green space. Policy LP 61 of the Kirklees local plan outlines that development which would result in the loss of urban green space will only be permitted in 3 circumstances, as listed in paragraph 10.6 of the committee report, and One such circumstance is an assessment which displays that the green space is clearly no longer required to meet the local needs for open space, sports or recreational facilities, and does not make an important contribution in terms of visual amenity, landscape or biodiversity value. So the Kirklees open space assessment, which was conducted in 2016, categorised this land as allotments and community food growing being identified as a community orchard area, and assessed the land as having a medium value as open space. But the open space assessment was conducted before the approval of the primary school. In addition, there were no allotments on the site prior to the primary school development. Instead, and displayed on the image onto the right, trees previously formed this part of the site, but as shown on the previous image, these have since been removed as a consequence of the primary school development. So as displayed in this slide, under the primary school development, this application site was approved as a grassed area, or soft landscaped area, with some tree planting along the access road to the south, which would go to the school. As a consequence of such a change to the site after the Kirklees open space assessment, and that the site is not used for sports or recreation, officers consider that the site no longer meets local needs for open space. Nonetheless, officers still consider the soft landscaped area would make a positive contribution to the visual amenity of the area. And officers hold the view that the removal of the trees from the site has, however, somewhat reduced the visual amenity value of this site. So, given the above, officers consider that this urban green space only makes a positive contribution in terms of its visual amenity. Officers are also of the view that the proposal would urbanise this urban green space by virtue of the hard standing to form and make way for the car park. And as a result, and in the absence of the proposal not satisfying any of the criteria within policy LP61 for development in urban green space, officers hold the view that there is conflict with this policy, as well as some conflict with policy LP24 of the local plan. So planning law in this case dictates that applications be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise, and the planning balance section of the report discusses this balancing exercise in quite a bit of detail. However, in this case, officers hold the view that the harm caused by such a policy conflict is reduced as the contribution the site makes to the visual amenity is lessened since the time of the Kirklees open space study, especially with the reduction of the trees from the site. Furthermore, the harm would be reduced due to the modest scale of the car park and the fact that it would be sunk into the ground so as to reduce its prominence. Officers consider that the proposal would provide a number of public benefits too, which cumulatively outweigh the policy conflict. Of note, the proposed car park would help enhance the accessibility of the community facility of Trabell House by providing specific parking spaces for staff, service vehicles and visitors. The parking would also help prevent unsafe street parking in the vicinity of the site, and therefore the risk of conflict between highway users as well. So this could include pedestrians and motorists using the school development. With regard to this point, officers consider it relevant to note that the approved access to the primary school displaced vehicles which previously parked at the end of Cambridge House, and some of those were used by visitors or staff of Trabell House. Furthermore, whilst there is parking to the rear of Trabell House as it currently stands, this is accessed via a narrow lane to the rear of residential properties on Cambridge Road, and officers hold the view that this narrow lane and parking area, which is used by users of the care home, has the potential to harm the living environment of those neighbouring properties in terms of noise and disturbance. And there is also limited room for turning and manoeuvring given the width of the access and limited room to the rear of the site. So officers are of the view that the car park proposed under this application would be easier for motorists to access than the existing one, and certain users may opt to use this proposed car park instead, and as a result, officers consider that this would have the potential to enhance the living environment of neighbouring residential properties and reduce the conflicts between highway users. So, subject to appropriately worded conditions, the proposal would not result in any other harm, in the opinion of officers, such as no harm to the designated heritage assets, as well as no adverse harm to residential amenity, trees, highway safety. One representation has been received raising general comments on the application, and this representation is addressed within the report. And in light of the above, officers consider that the public benefits, this being the enhancement of the community facility, the reduction of risks to highway safety, and the potential to improve the living environment of neighbouring residents, would outweigh the harm by virtue of policy conflicts. It is therefore recommended that the application is approved, subject to the conditions set out in the report. So I've got nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'm getting a little bit concerned about applications coming forward that effectively undermine the urban green space policy and just this nibbling away. The policy sets out that there is an opportunity to provide replacement land in exchange for releasing some urban green space. And rather than just give it up, by applying the policy correctly, we can maintain the integrity of the policy. So my question would be, is bearing in mind this relates to a primary school site, is there absolutely no similar piece of sized land within the primary school development that could be reallocated as urban green space to help meet the policy?
This is not something that I've discussed with the agent in this case, but it's something I could explore if it's considered necessary.
Thank you. Well, the Brambles Primary School is within Mohan and I's ward, so we're well aware of the site and the issues of all the land around it. And I have to say there is absolutely no space to, I would say, to substitute any land within the primary school or whatever for this urban green space. I mean, yes, before there were trees on this site, but it was never actually particularly used as an urban green space, other than the biodiversity, etc., that may have been found there. I do know the road and the site and the access at the back of the care home well, again, and I concur with everything that the officer has said about the disadvantage of using the back alley to basically access that care home. And I do think that provision of just those 6 spaces near to the road, the access road to Brambles, will be of benefit in terms of the traffic that will be there in the morning and the afternoon in terms of pedestrians and cars trying to access the school. I fear the land will not, if it's not used productively as this, but by this car park, it will just return to scrub land and it won't be used for anything in particular. The school certainly won't be using it because it's outside of their actual gated curtilage, I think. And I'm happy with the proposal to, in this particular case, allow urban green space to be used for this car park. I think it's just a small addition to what, again, is a useful community facility, and I think it does outweigh the disbenefits of using this piece of land. So again, I'm happy to support it. Oh, and by the way, the school's open now. It's all up and running.
Thank you, Chair. Like Carol, this land, small site, is on the borderline between Greenhead Ward and the Newsham Ward, yeah? The school, Bramley School, new school is in Greenhead, and the site is Newsham, I think, is the borderline. They're just crossing on there. Recently, Chair, Kirklees Council has spent a lot of money to improve or open the new access to the Bramley School from the Cambridge Road side. And they have spent a lot of money on the improving the pavement and the road service as well. But this, as Carol said, this small land for this only for 6 car parking spaces is a great benefit to the community who use the access to the school and other people around. So I don't think it will damage any urban areas, so no affected trees. So I'm happy to support the applicant. Second, Carol's move to approve this office recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, like Councillor Greaves, I'm a bit dubious about nibbling away at urban green space, having had a large chunk of urban green space got rid of in my ward, so for housing. However, be that as it may, the ward councillors clearly think that this is a good thing. But can I ask, please, given that there are or were trees on the site, maybe not a very good quality, but is there any possibility of being able to put in a condition, because there's nothing in the conditions that I can see at the moment, to require some vegetation, some compensatory vegetation, maybe including trees, to be planted elsewhere, even if it's in the grounds of the school, for instance. So is that a possibility, please?
Yeah, having spoken to the agent themselves on the phone last week, they seemed quite amenable to measures to improve the site. So I think they were talking about measures that could potentially soften the development. So I think they'll be amenable to trees. So that's something I can discuss with them.
Sorry, could we have a condition to that effect then, please?
Chair, just to come back on the urban green space point, the rest of the school remains as urban green space. This is a very small part. My understanding is before the school access was put in, people were parking at the end of that road, and this is kind of a replacement for that, taking it off-road and a replacement provision. We can put on a condition that says a landscape scheme to be provided and see what can be achieved.
Just to say, trees has been a big issue with this the development of brambles itself, and as many trees as possible have been put back into the scheme, so there won't be any more trees, space for trees, I don't think, within the school grounds, but that's not to say that on this little patch of land there wouldn't be.
Thank you, Chair. 6 parking spaces, one ingress-egress, which all I can see is being problematic in itself. Urban green space, yet another nibble, as people have said. And will it go, if it's left, will it go back to its neglected condition? Well, if there was another piece of land allocated for urban green space, would that be neglected as well? So I'm betwixt and between as far as it being an advantage or a disadvantage at this moment in time, Chair. Thank you.
So we'll go to a vote.
Right, so this is voting for officer recommendation with the additional condition I've got down for a landscape scheme. So Councillor Greaves?
Abstain.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Bellamy.
Abstain.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
Abstain.
Councillor Hall.
For.
So that's 1, 2, 3. That's 4 for, 3 abstentions. So officer recommendation is approved.
Next, it's
planning officers to explore in detail whether or not council policies can be actually met before moving towards finding reasons to not sustain them. So for the future, especially where it's urban green space, I would expect officers to do a full investigation as to whether replacement land can be provided, and to inform the committee that that work has been taken place and whether it is possible or isn't possible.
noted. Am I right in saying that this is where we go about allotments? Other end? Right. 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 Page 179, Stuart, and this is Reuters Community School.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just waiting for the slides. Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, I'm Stuart Howden again, the planner, and this application seeks planning permission for the erection of a perimeter fencing around Reuters Community School within Paddock, Huddersfield. So here's the slide showing an aerial image of the site and a slightly faint site plan to the bottom right. The application has been brought to committee as it seeks to provide fencing on a site over 0.5 hectare and within the urban green space as well, and has been in receipt of a 100-person petition and associated representations opposing the development. The site comprises Royds Hall Community School, which is a secondary school. There is a lawned playing field to the east of the site there, and to the north are some hard surface sports courts, and there is then a car park associated with the school to the northwest, which is near to a tree belt. Adjacent to the community school and to the southeast of its campus grounds is Look Lane Primary School, so that's the building, the long building there at the bottom right, and this is recently developed. To the southwest, south and east of these campuses are residential properties, and to the north of the site are allotments and Middle Wood, and to the west is a recreation space, which is Douglas Recreation Grounds. The school campuses are designated as urban green space in the Kirklees local plan, as are the allotments and Middle Wood to the north and the recreation ground to the west. Part of the school grounds are already fenced with green mesh fencing at a height of approximately 2.4 metres. For instance, there is such fencing around the hard surface courts to the north, as well as around the whole of Look Lane Primary School to the south-east. So the yellow buildings on there outline the listed buildings. So the one central is Royds Hall itself, which is a former villa and is Grade 2 listed. And this has been significantly amended over the 20th century and is now surrounded by modern school buildings which vary in design and form. And then just to the very right, or the east of there, is 132 Look Lane, which is also Grade 2 listed. And the green and the dashed green areas on there represents the tree preservation orders. So there are individual trees which are protected, as are tree groups.
The next slide displays the proposed location of the boundary enclosure, which is proposed so as to secure the site. It's proposed to provide fencing from the access to the north of the site. There, it's a bit faint, and I will provide closer images of that so it's a little bit more easy to understand what's going on. But it's also proposed to provide fencing to the south and southwest, and then that would go all the way up to the car park to the northwest there. This would not fence off land within the school's wider ownership, which would be shown in blue on this plan, but it's quite a faint line, so it doesn't block off the sports field to the right. And the dark green weld mesh fencing is proposed to be 2.4 metres in height, like the existing fencing there, and would be have access gates for pedestrians and vehicular access and vehicles at certain points. So this slide here is showing the fencing proposed at the north-east section of the site. It would be proposed between the hard surface courts of the north and the existing perimeter fencing around Luck Lane Primary School. So the picture to the bottom right, you can just see faintly to the right is the fencing of the hard courts, and to the left is the fencing around Luck Lane Primary School, and it would essentially infill the area just behind those barriers. And this area of fencing would include staff and student pedestrian gates as well as vehicular access. The next slide displays the proposed siting of the fencing to the south and southwest of the site. This would start at the access close to Victoria Avenue, sort of towards the right of the image, and then it would run along Victoria Avenue and then along Royds Avenue to the electric substation, which is at the top left of the image. And again, there would be points of access for staff and vehicles. So along Victoria Avenue and Royds Avenue at the moment, there is currently a 0.5 metre high wooden fence as displayed in some of the pictures, as you can see on the left side and the top right side. And this is currently adjacent to tree preservation order trees. To the bottom right, the green weld mesh fencing around Luck Lane Primary School can just be seen at the bottom right of that image. And the last section where the fencing would be proposed would carry on from that electricity substation, which was in the previous image, and then adjacent to the residential property there, and then it would go around the staff car park and connect with the hard surface courts. And this also includes a pedestrian access gate to the recreation fields to the west of the site, where the car park is. So members have a full detailed report in front of them. As mentioned previously though, the site is designated as urban green space in the Kirklees local plan. This area of urban green space within the site is designated for educational uses. Officers hold the view that the fencing, which would replace fencing in certain areas, would not result in the loss of green space, but would provide security for it, and at the same time allowing for public access to Middlewood and the allotments and the recreation ground. Thus, officers consider there to be no conflict with policy LP 61 of the Kirklees local plan in this instance. In terms of the visual amenity, the fencing would be visible from parts of Victory Avenue and Royds Avenue being adjacent to these highways. However, officers hold the view that the fencing would be in keeping with the existing fencing within the vicinity in terms of its materials, its height and its style. Officers also consider that the proposed fencing would be lightweight and visually transparent, with the dark green colour being red against trees and green growth on the site. It is therefore considered that the proposal would prevent undue harm to the visual amenities of the area. In terms of the impact upon the significance of the Grade 2 list of buildings and their settings, our officers hold the view that the only harm would be to the significance of the Grade 2 listed building of Royds Hall, which sits at the centre of the school. This is due to the infilling section to the north of the site, which can be viewed together with this listed building. However, this less than substantial harm is considered to be at the low end or the minimum scale and this listed building is surrounded with modern extensions as well, some of which make a negative contribution to its significance. Furthermore, the fencing would be set off from this building by approximately 55 metres. Protected trees would help screen the building, and as noted, the fence would be transparent, and it is only running between two existing weld mesh fences. In terms of the public benefits to outweigh such harm, officers note that whilst a wooden fence is of lower visual impact, it can easily be stepped over and presents a weak point in terms of the security and presents issues with safeguarding. So officers are of the opinion that the 2.4 metre high green mesh fence would secure the weak points of the site, and the council's Designing Out Crime consultee also holds the view that this proposed fencing would be beneficial towards securing the site. Thus, there would be a positive impact on safeguarding for school attendees and property, and the council's conservation officer considers that these public benefits outweigh the less than substantial harm and has no objections. Thus, officers consider that the educational benefits of the proposal outweigh the less than substantial harm to the significance of this listed building. In terms of protected trees, the method statement has been submitted alongside the application, and this outlines that the fence posts near the TPOs would be hand dug, roots carefully pruned, and the holes would be lined with material to prevent any leaking or contamination to the trees. The council's tree officer is satisfied that the measures outlined within this statement are acceptable and would safeguard the trees, and therefore has recommended a condition that this is adhered to. In addition, set out in the committee report, officers consider that the proposal will not have a detrimental impact on residential amenity and environmental health. As noted previously, there is a petition with 100 signatures objecting to the application. This raises concerns with the impact upon the listed buildings, protected trees and visual amenity, which I've discussed briefly and are addressed in the report. The petition also raises concerns with public access to a forest. However, the positioning of the fence into the north-east would still allow for public access from the access track to Middlewood and the allotments without needing to go through any gate with a fob. It's open still. And given the above, officers recommend that the application is approved subject to the conditions set out in the report. So I have nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bellamy.
Yeah, just a bit of a query. The new fence is going to be 2.4 metres in height. What is the height of the fence at the moment, the wooden one?
The wooden one is 0.5, or circa 0.5, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure about urban green space. What are the policies around fencing off urban green space, if any? Thank you, Chair.
No. I just want to know, Chair, the petition signed by 100 people, is that on the understanding of the fence about 4 metre high, not 2.4 metre?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. Is it on the fence that's proposed? Is it?
No, it says the petition, they thought the fencing is 4 metre high.
Oh yeah, I think that might be a typo in the officer report. I think it should say 2.4 metre high, and that's what the concern is about.
It's 2 metres.
It's 2.4 metres, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. This is yet another school right on the edge of Mohan and I's ward boundary. And I did previously declare an interest in this, and as far as the applicants for this are Kirklees School Services, and I'm on that board. Mind you, this is actually the school asking. I mean, Kirklees School Services are doing this on behalf of the school. Anyway, I mean, I won't say I'm in two minds. I'm not in two minds, but this is really difficult for me because being on Kirklees School Services and knowing the school well and having an interest in education, I am well aware that the need to safeguard schools, particularly these days, or the children in schools, and I'm well aware, again, of the insecurity that's surrounded this site for many years, which I have to say has been managed well, and there haven't been great incidents, but the risk is always there. However, I'm also well aware how much the community use Middlewood, the playing fields, to play or to walk their dogs or whatever. It's always been seen, the wider area has always been seen as a real community asset for many people around the area, and there's 3 different wards, in fact, that actually benefit from this: Linley, Golker, and Greenhead. But my concern is not really can be taken into account, I think, in terms of planning. But I suppose the one thing I'd just like to make a statement, really, that by fencing off the school, and it's very near ground, I hope that nobody gets the impression, be it the school or the public, that the school is not still responsible for that wider area, because they are responsible. They've got a lease on that, which means that they're meant to manage the woods and the playing fields outside of the actual fencing area. And I wouldn't want anyone to think that having enclosed the school that they can forget, either they can forget about the rest of the land, or that the public feel that it's not available for their use, because that shouldn't be so. But as I say, I don't think that's a planning issue particularly, and I don't think it can be conditioned in any way. So, I mean, I do have to support the application, I think, just on the grounds of safeguarding, but I do so with some tinges of remorse, which are perhaps rose-tinted glasses.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back on Councillor Thompson's point, the urban green space policy doesn't relate to fencing at all. It's about maintaining the space as it is, and obviously it is maintained here. It's just enclosed by a fence, or part of it is enclosed. Coming back to Councillor Sokkel's point, the objector did actually consider the fence to be 4 metres. That's in her objection letter. I think she may have misunderstood the plans, but obviously it's not 4 metres, it's 2.4. Thanks, Chair.
Chair, as Carol said, this school is a secondary school, and the primary school, which is only about 3-4 years old. That school is three area: Golker, Minsbridge, and part of Lendley, Paddock, my ward in Greenhead. Yeah, and. For the past few years, there was a big problem, antisocial behavior around the school. Many times they called the police, many times, and there was a problem. People were outside, young people were interfering with the student in the school. So, because of the children's safety, safeguarding of children, that's why the school wanted the fencing around there. We know there is a listed building, but the listed building is part of the school. So I think the school management committee, I'm not on the management committee, they need safeguarding of their children, which we always promote that. So I think we should support this application by the school. Thank you. If nobody moved, I moved it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, they have had a lot of antisocial behaviour in the area and the school. kids getting onto schoolyard and all sorts of problems. I don't know if I'm too happy with the massive fence of 2.4 metres, but to be honest, I don't see what else they can do. So I'll second. Thank you.
We're in a bad situation today when you've got to put fences up that are that high to keep unruly folk out. It's just same round our way. But that's what we've got. Right, that's been moved, it's been seconded, so we'll go to a vote.
So voting on the officer recommendation to approve. Councillor Greaves.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Socko.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
And that concludes today's meeting. Thank you all very much. See you next month.